Good morning on this Sunday, September 25th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Incumbent Governor Brian Kemp and his Democratic opponent Stacey Abrams are out on the campaign trail. We'll talk about the issues they're focusing on across the state. Also, a look at some of the down-ballot races, including Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and Agriculture Commissioner. Also, debate erupts in Fulton County over billions of dollars in sales tax revenue. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begins right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
A new Ajc poll released this week shows Republicans in Georgia in the lead. Now, according to the polls, Governor Brian Kemp is at 50% to Stacey Abrams' 42%. Both hit the campaign trail with their own message to voters.
We cannot have any of our folks staying at home. We got to work harder than we've ever worked before.
Governor Brian Kemp warned a Republican crowd in Hart County not to take anything for granted and reminded them of his record.
We got the greatest economy that I've seen in my lifetime in the state. Lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state, the most people working ever in the history of the state, least amount of people on the unemployment rolls. And even during the middle of a global pandemic, we've had 2 record years in a row of economic development.
Kemp's opponent, Stacey Abrams, decided to focus on other parts of Kemp's record at a gathering to discuss gun violence.
You know that in a matter of weeks, we are going to lose one of only 2 level 1 trauma centers in Atlanta. We are also in the grip of increased gun violence under this governor, where Georgia has the 9th highest gun violence rate in the nation, and gun violence is the #1 killer of our children.
Abrams doubled down on her stance to expand Medicaid and says that move could help alleviate violence before it escalates.
One of the realities of Medicaid expansion is that Medicaid expansion would provide access to health insurance that could be used to access mental health.
Now, the Ajc poll shows 54% rather of Georgians approve of how Governor Kemp is handling the job. Melita, to you first this week. We always say that polls are just a snapshot in time. This is one of the first ones we've seen where Governor Kemp is over that 50% threshold that he needs for an outright win.
Yes, it is the first one, but there were also several other polls which came out on Thursday and Friday, similar to the Ajc poll. The Ajc poll only polled 861 likely voters, and usually you like to see a poll which gets above the 1,000 voter threshold to be considered legitimate. But the poll that counts is the one which begins on October 17th with early voting. And I think it'd be good for us to remind people that the unregistered, if there are any who watch this show or they have friends, must register before October 11th.
All right, good information there. Phil, over to you, because Governor Kemp had a message like, you may think I'm ahead here, but don't forget, get to the polls.
Well, and I think both campaigns are stressing that. By the way, the Insider Advantage poll, Fox 5, we had 2 weeks ago mirrored this AJC UG8 poll, which was very interesting. I thought if you dig into this poll too, you saw that 54% of the respondents thought that Brian Kemp was doing a great job as governor of Georgia. And I think that the hemorrhaging is continuing with regard to voters turning away from Stacey Abrams as we get into this stage. She's still trying to solicit, shore up the black vote, for example. Theron has discussed, and I agree with that she needs about 90% of the black vote. She's not there yet, so she's struggling. And I think that we'll have a discussion probably next week to see how much the hemorrhaging is continuing on Abrams.
Well, Theron, on the issue of abortion, Stacey Abrams said this week that there's no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks, and that it's a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body. I was quoting her there. What's the strategy here, do you think? Is it to drive up that female vote? Because we know that's a big issue for Democrats.
Well, there's been some sort of mixed responses for her comment. I think her campaign is going to have to clarify her statement, and she'll do that very soon. But I've said on this show that I don't think you can detect a heartbeat at 6 weeks. Now, since I've said that, and since she said it, there have been medical experts that come back and sort of push back on that. But I think this issue around the Dobbs decision and abortion, we've seen in the Inside Advantage poll, the Marriage poll, the Ajc poll, all these polls, is that it's always 1, 2, or 3 on voters' minds, particularly in the Democratic Party. And so Stacey is an experienced campaigner statewide. She knows that if she has a chance of winning, I don't think she'll probably get upwards to 90%. But look, if she gets 90% of the black vote, then that's really good for her. But if she stays in that mid 80s, that's going to be very tough. But I think that this is an issue that she's going to continue to talk about, that she really feels that they'll help her out in the middle. And more importantly, it's not just motivating women. I think some men, when I talk to them, they're very concerned about the attack in some states, but particularly in Georgia, on women's reproductive rights.
And Martha, we know it's motivating Democrats, but what about the middle? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
I mean, when you look at total polling, the abortion issue is 4, 5, or 6 in most cases. It's not 1, 2, or 3. But I think that what we're seeing is that the economic issues are extremely important in that. And the other thing I wanted to comment on is Stacey's comments related to gun violence. And while that's an important number, but Georgia is the 8th largest state in the country. So having the 9th largest number of gun violence deaths, that's bad. Okay, I'm not saying it's good, but you would expect, that's not a number out of the realm of what you'd expect being the 8th largest state in the country. So I think what you got to do, and I'm not going to call it hemorrhaging, what I'm going to call it is what the governor has said. We got to get out and vote. We got to get every voter out. We know from the people that didn't turn out in January 2021 that there's about a 300,000 vote advantage for Republicans, and we got to get those folks out to vote. So I think it's a positive message from an incumbent governor that's going to get them out.
Melita, before I move on.
Well, what we need to remember is that this term heartbeat, as used in legislation and as used in politics, is very different from the medical reality of what is happening with the developing embryo at 6 weeks. The heart, as we all know it, does not develop until more like the 9th or 10th week of pregnancy. And there are medical experts who are quoted in the New York Times, and I believe they do try to find good sources for their quotes, who say, much as Stacey Abrams said, that it is the machine itself which makes the rhythmic sound that people believe to be a heartbeat.
Is this a male
Heartbeat.
conspiracy? Is this a male conspiracy?
Martha.
What's all that about?
Look, the heartbeat is not the term that's used in the heartbeat bill. It is cardiac sounds, and because you're right about that. Also, the 6 weeks number is something the press put in there. It's not in the bill either.
All right, we're going to move on to the U.S. Senate race. The AJC poll has Republican Herschel Walker at 46%, to Senator Warnock's 44%. The Libertarian in the race, Chase Oliver, at 3%. Now there's talk of a possible Trump campaign event the day after these two debate on October 14th. Phil, considering what happened in the primary, where Governor Kemp handily defeated the Trump-backed David Perdue, does a Trump visit help or hurt Republicans?
It helps. The Republican Party is a coalition, just like the Democratic Party is a coalition of various factions. And so we talk about pushing out the vote. That's going to push out the vote and the rural areas that went overwhelmingly for Trump in 2020. And so I think it's interesting, too, to see that Donald Trump is behaving himself when it comes to Georgia. He has not criticized Brian Kemp at all. And I think he's following some good advice from Republicans in Georgia.
Oh, but Darren, the damage is already done there, right? And what's the Democratic strategy if former President Trump comes to Georgia?
Yeah, we love when Trump comes to Georgia. So I encourage Martha and Phil, y'all should encourage him to come because he's not going to be able to control himself. You're right, he has been behaving, but he's got a lot going on. He's got a major FBI investigation. Investigating
a witch hunt.
He calls it corruption. He's declassifying documents, which he said recently that the president has the ability to even think that they can declassify documents on their own. So it's not that he's not wanting to get involved in Georgia races, Phil. It's that he's actually under investigation. And you know, you would say that about a Democrat that was going on with a former president. However, you put 46-44 up there, Lori. I'm not going to ignore that because I know our viewers didn't know that. That was a poll. That poll came out that showed that Herschel Walker was ahead. And now I want our viewers to also know I saw 3 other polls that have remained the same, which shows that Warnock is ahead of Walker. But what is happening, I believe, is that Republicans are making 2 decisions, I believe. Either you're going to go and vote the entire ticket, right, and you're going to just support all the Republicans no matter what, or you're looking at Herschel Walker a little differently, because is it about Herschel Walker or is it about the Republicans' opportunity to control the U.S. Senate? And I think that's where you see the gap is sort of closing.
Well, and Martha, on the issue of Trump, I would imagine we would see Herschel Walker and Bert Jones at a Trump rally. Not sure if we would see Governor Kemp, Brad Raffensperger, and some of the others.
Well, I think this program shows the diversity of the Republican Party, because I'm going to say that President Trump needs to do what he did for Glenn Youngkin, and that is not show up. I think that it would be better for the entire ticket if that were the case. And as far as the debate goes that everybody's going to be looking for, and I'll be looking forward to your gourmet popcorn, is that it's a weird thing. Initially, everybody thought that a debate would favor Senator Warnock. I think what's happened by the way Herschel played it is that Warnock is expected to wipe the floor with Herschel Walker, okay? If he does anything less than that, then he's failed. Herschel is expected to do poorly against Reverend Warnock, and if he does anything better than that, or it's a draw, he wins. So I think the tide is turned on what's expected from the debate.
It's all about expectations and setting expectations, right? All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, a look at the Georgia Attorney General's race, where polling shows Republican incumbent Chris Carr ahead of his Democratic challenger, Jen Jordan.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
We'd like to focus this block on some of the down ballot races, including Attorney General. The AJC poll shows that the Republican incumbent Chris Carr up at 45% to Jen Jordan's 35%. A lot of folks, though, undecided. Martha, it's early, but these two have clearly different views on Georgia's abortion law. Jen Jordan saying she would not spend taxpayer money to defend Georgia's restrictive law. How does this play out in the Attorney General's race?
Yeah, I'll be ending my term as interim executive director with Georgia Life Alliance next month. But I just wanted to say that the problem with Jen Jordan is she's talking about these things like a legislator. She's talking about what she would enforce or what the law should say or what the law shouldn't say. If she wants to make law, she ought to stay in the legislature. The Attorney General's job is not to make law. The Attorney General's job is to uphold the laws of Georgia and to listen to that. So I think the 10 points, I think it's more than that, and I think that her record and all the votes she missed in her time as a state senator and how poorly she represented her constituents is going to play into how she does.
Melita.
Well, I'll say that Georgia Win List, for which I serve as executive director, has endorsed Stacey Abrams, Jen Jordan, and B. Wynn for statewide races. I think that you go back to when Thurbert Baker served as Attorney General in 2003, and we had Governor Sonny Perdue, and you see that Sonny Perdue and Thurbert Baker disagreed about redistricting maps. And the court said that they both had a role there. And so there is reason for an attorney general to believe that he or she can give their interpretation of whether a law is constitutional. And that's what Jen Jordan is doing on the campaign trail.
Phil.
I'm tired of these permissive liberal DAs and now the Attorney General candidate Jordan saying that they're just going to pick and choose these laws that they're going to enforce or not enforce. They need to enforce laws that are on the books. And I think more and more Georgians and more Americans are getting tired of this picking and choosing.
Well, but the Georgia Supreme Court ruled back in 2003 that Baker and Perdue both had the power to control the state government's legal affairs, and the governor couldn't enforce.
Oh, I understand that case.
General.
I understand that case, but what other laws is she going to refuse to enforce? I just think that's a dangerous road for an attorney general to go down. I think that's why she's down in the polls.
All right, well, let's turn to the lieutenant governor's race. Republican Bert Jones is ahead of Democrat Charlie Bailey, 43 to 33%. Theron, is it tough for some of these candidates in these lower profile races to get their messages out because of all the attention on the governor's race and Senate race?
Yes, and I'm so happy that we're talking about it. Thank you, Lori, for doing that, because I know all of them, and maybe except maybe two that are actually on the constitutional ballot right now. And I would hope, Melita, that Georgia Win List, y'all take a second, third look at Alicia, Thomas Searcy, and Nikita Hemingway, who are very qualified women who are on the statewide ballot right now. But if you look at people like William Bodie and others, I mean, they are telling me, hey, Theron, we need your money, but also they're like, hey, we need some airtime. But particularly with Charlie. I want to say this really quick about Charlie, and Charlie did a really good interview with Russ Spencer on Road to November this week, and I encourage people to go download that video on Fox 5. And he talked about his past as a prosecutor. He talked about what he would do with crime. He's a proud Harris County resident, but he's running against a tough person running as a Republican in Bert Jones, who is going to have a lot of money, who's been pretty disciplined lately. The electoral issue is a real issue, but we really won't know, the fake electoral, issue is a real issue, but we really won't know how that will play out into after the election, because the DA, Fonnie Willis, want to investigate him or question him into afterwards.
Martha?
Well, I've offered all these Democratic candidates time. They are reluctant to take it, and I think they ought to take the opportunity. I think when this is all said and done, if it goes the way this poll is showing it's going on all these races, it's because I think Democrats have spent too much time focusing on areas that they should have already had shorn up. And they haven't reached out enough across the aisle into swing voters. That's just what it looks like to me from my perch, and I just think that you've got to make people feel engaged.
One more race I want to get into here. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's extremely important in Georgia, is the race for Agriculture Commissioner. It's Republican State Senator Tyler Harper versus Democrat Nikita Hemingway. Phil, back to you. Both of these candidates grew up on farms and have extensive experience. So is it tough for voters going to be to differentiate other than party?
Well, agriculture is our #1 industry in the state, and it's a very important race. And I think Tyler Harper is introducing himself with some wonderful ads right now. I don't see any ads by the Democrat that are going to pull voters in on this race. Harper gives a great stump speech. He's a 7th-generation farmer. He knows his stuff. Gary Black, the current commissioner, I think really appreciates Harper. So I can see why he's doing well in the polls. I don't see where the Democrat, perhaps underfunded, is responding to any of this.
Melita?
Well, in both the lieutenant governor's race and in this ag commissioner race, you have a lot of family money behind the two Republican candidates. They have almost unlimited budgets for hitting the airwaves with their message.
But are the two top, right, the governor's race and the Senate race, to your point, Darren, are they also sucking up a lot of the money?
They are sucking up
Yeah,
a lot of the money
absolutely.
from legislative candidates, from down ballot candidates. That U.S. Senate race and that governor's race, people tap out by maxing out to them and to the other committees that support them. So it's a very difficult job to fundraise for down ballot races right now.
But there is a coordinated campaign going on. It's a coordinated campaign effort on the Republican side too. So I think these candidates are really, really focusing on getting some of that money. But a little bit about Nikita Hemingway. Tyler Harper is a good guy. State senator worked with him. But one thing about her is that she comes from a long line of farmers who grew up in a 360-acre farm near Savannah River. Today, she's actually agriculture heritage, working there, a cut flower farm and a business in Tequila. And so she also has a pretty extensive background in farming. But as Phil said, she will be up on the air soon in some type of capacity, whether it's digital or something, to tell people about her and why she thinks she's qualified to be agriculture commissioner.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, mayors in Fulton County come together to discuss the county's proposal on how to spend billions of dollars in sales tax revenue. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
It's known as the local option sales tax, or LOST, and in Fulton County it adds up to more than $3 billion over 10 years. Fulton County now gets 5% of that money. The rest is split among the 15 counties within Fulton County, and some county commissioners want to increase the county share to 35%, and that's a non-starter for many of these mayors. Phil, we'll start with you. It's a little complicated, but we kind of get the gist of it.
Right. Well, there's 15 cities in Fulton County, and there's a formula that you have to do to get the sales tax money distributed. And so there's billions of dollars, if you look over the next 10 years, that are at stake here. And my thought is Fulton County still has a bloated government because these cities have left and they have their own budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So they're being greedy, and I think the 15 mayors are now in mediation, and so they're going to have to figure out the right formula. In fact, just a quick example, when I say Fulton County's bloated, they have 200 fully salaried jobs that are unfilled. Now, there's plenty of, as a fiscal conservative, I could help them cut their government.
I'm sure they'll love to consult with you. Melita.
Well, but the other thing on Fulton County's side of this ledger is that Fulton County underwrites a lot of the operation of Grady Hospital, and Fulton County pays for the operation of the jail and the court system. And so they do have expenses that they have a right to ask the cities to take part in. They may have overreached with the percentage they first asked for, but that's what mediation is all about.
And negotiation, right?
Well, I think they did that on purpose. They know they're not going to get 35%. But if you go not only to Fulton County, but go to counties all around the state, anywhere where they're sharing e-splost or splost, that you will have this sort of push and shove, because everybody's got to agree or it can't go on the ballot. Everybody's got to agree or it can't be split up. So it gives people some power. Sometimes some small people have the power out of it. Sometimes the big guy like Fulton County
and I would
does.
assume Fulton County does have some increasing expenses in terms of the jail and health care.
They do.
I would think so.
And
Cut costs.
But the one thing that I'm very encouraged by is that I know Chairman Rob Pitts and other commissioners, they pride themselves of having a good working relationship with their mayors within Fulton County. And so the mayors had an opportunity this week to voice their concerns. But now, as Martha said, now you got to get into the deliberations. You basically got to figure out, okay, is this really something that is legal and that you can do? But as far as wasteful spending, I think the county has done a really good job. Dick Anderson over there has done a good job of balancing that budget. They do have some vacant positions, but it's COVID. A lot of folks have retired. A lot of those positions, they're shifting. And you're right, as Melita said, they have a huge cost with Grady and other services that they provide. And so I think this will continue to play out. They'll continue to communicate, and they'll find a percentage that the mayors and the commissioners think are fair.
All right, well, we'll move on then. At first, the DeKalb Board of Education decided to pass on a vote related to the teaching of divisive concepts, but reluctantly passed a policy this week which is required by state law. Now, some on the school board have concerns with limiting how teachers talk about history and discrimination. We discussed this and debated this when the law was getting passed, but Martha, your take on this?
Look, the bottom line is the law requires that they come up with a policy to support this, and that's what ultimately was the leverage that the Department of Education had over the DeKalb County School Board. So, you know, there weren't any threats made. It was just, hey, you've got to follow the law. Law says you've got to come with a policy. It doesn't say you can opt out of the policy. So it's no more complicated than that.
And Melita, if they did opt out, they would be at risk of losing some funding.
They'd be at risk of losing state funding. That's what their school board attorney told them. And so this is what forced them to pass this policy.
Phil.
Let's talk about what exactly does this divisive concepts law state for our viewers. You can teach about discrimination and parts of Georgia history that do not say that one race is superior to another. That is wrong. I think everybody ought to be proud of their race and ethnicity. And it also says that this country is not systematically racist. And that's basically all it is.
I think the thing that, to echo what Melita said, is that the board members said publicly, hey, we disagree with this policy. However, we do not want to lose funding for our scholars. But to shift it from the board, I think the current Superintendent Tinsley, has done a really good job of steadying the ship. We all know that there was a abrupt departure of the former superintendent. And so while the board had to make this very controversial and tough decision, it was all about state funding and following the law. I do want to compliment the superintendent for doing the best of what she has to basically steady the ship right now within the school system.
Martha, final word?
Well, I got to tell you, and this is a completely, it's related but unrelated. If you want to teach the real history of Georgia, then Michael Thurman's book Freedom is the one they ought to be teaching.
I agree with you on that.
And let's teach the real history. Let's not argue about it. Let's teach the real history.
Just the facts.
Well, and
Just
Michael Thurman just spoke at a commemoration for the rededication of a historic bridge at Stone Mountain, and he talked about some of the real history behind that bridge in an article that Jim Galloway wrote coming out of retirement. And it's a fascinating read, and Thurman talked a lot about crossing and building bridges.
What we don't want is critical race theory, which teaches that one race is oppressing another race, and that is so wrong, and that's why the Democrats are hurting, because some of them, not all, some of them are supporting this critical race theory.
I want to compliment the Chief, Jim Galloway. That was a really good opinion piece, highlighting the black man, the role that this bridge played.
Yeah.
And so it was really a conversation that I think we got to have more of in this state.
And we will make Michael Thurman a winner before even winners and losers.
That's
So,
right.
Coming
He
up,
is a winner.
Winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
One of our gangsters is celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday, Melita. So
Thank you.
You get to go first on winners and losers.
Well, my winner is Macon-Bibb County for donating an additional 250 acres to the Ocmulgee Mounds National Historic Park, which commemorates sacred land to the Muskogee Nation. And then my loser is former Trump attorney Sidney Powell, who dodged her subpoena at the Fulton Grand Jury on Thursday.
Phil.
I've got a winner. It's Dade County Sheriff Ray Cross. What did he do? Well, it shows that the open borders crisis has already been hitting Georgia. There was a bus coming through from Texas going to D.C. with illegal aliens. They stopped in Dade County. They were trying to melt into the community. They got off the bus. They ripped off their wristbands that identifies them. The sheriff said, no way, get back on the bus and get out of here. And Governor Kemp supported that. So winners.
All right, Martha.
So Georgia Head Start was at John Ossoff's office when I was visiting him this week, and they said, aren't you on the Georgia Gang? And so I want to give a shout out to Georgia Head Start because they were great, and we had pictures taken, and we had a lot of fun. My loser this week is Stacey Abrams. I mean, she really is showing desperation with the kind of comments that she's making, and they aren't factual, and they're just designed to scare people.
All right, over to you, Theron, because you have a prop this week, too.
Yeah, I do. I brought my props back. First, thank everyone who came out to the Georgia State University for the Political Breakfast Live. And I also want to give a big shout out to Sarah and Yolanda Fenton. They're big fans of the show at the Butler Street Historic Baptist Church.
Nice.
And then also I'm going to put on my Elton John glasses. Guys, I had a chance to go and see Elton John. So shout out to my good friend and our realtor, John Howard, who is a personal friend of Elton John. The concert was amazing. It's his farewell tour. So thank you all for all the people who came out. It was my first time, but thank you, John, again. And shout out to Elton. 30 years living in Atlanta, 75 years old. Phil, you definitely should check the show out. Yeah.
Can I borrow them?
I got to give them back to John.
They look good on you. They do. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.